You can get cheap. Moria has no cav, really. It's got marauders, but they're 30 points each. Whereas if you ally in Frida, suddenly you get access to Warg Riders or Dunlendings. And also, that's an easy way for her to drop in with a bomb team. So basically, if the new meta is going to be bombs away, that's a very easy and convenient way for her to ally her in with a bomb team, some Warg Riders, a Krebine, and then a handful of Huskarls with spears. That could be a very nasty cocktail.
Ugh, yuck. I do worry about what I'll be able to do against bombs, and that I think the only way you can deal with it is just trying to shoot the crap out of everything that's got a plain brand.
Well, the Berserker's defense 6 against arrows, so good luck with that.
Is there the old rule about if you take away the bomb's final wound, it rolls on the detonation chart where it is and could go off?
So they changed it a couple of times, haven't they? So I'm not sure what the current thing is.
It could be like a bit of a sneaky thing to do to Sorcerer's Blast the bomb or something. Just keep blasting it away from you as long as you can.
To be honest, my thought was you should be able to set it off with Flame Burst and then that's some synergy with Saruman. But so I'm just finding it. Feral Uruks, Dunland.
One idea I've had is there a possibility you get your Isengard troll to pick it up and hurl it at people and see if it detonates on its own like a grenade?
Yeah, unfortunately you can only hurl enemy models. More's the pity. So here we are with the demolition team.
As far as I'm aware, it's got 3 wounds, defense 7 or something. You can kill it if you take away its last wound. It rolls on the detonation chart.
If the charge is wounded, roll a d6, and on a 6, then it blows up. If it's wounded by another demolition charge, it goes off on a 4+ per wound rather than a 6. If it's brought to 0 wounds without exploding, the demolition charge is shattered and the powder scatters harmlessly on the ground. Remove it from play.
The nasty idea of a chain reaction of explosions all the way down the line, just annihilating both armies.
And here's the other thing people haven't thought about with demolition charges, is it effectively allows you to control when the game ends. So
just detonating your own army if you want to end it on 5.
So have a think about, you bring Saruman on, you move him to one side, you send your Krebine scooting off in reconnoiter, and then you literally just blow your entire army up, and then you've won.
Yeah, sure. Might not get a favourite game vote, but you'll win your scenario if that's what your aim is.
And finally, an enemy model that spends a fight phase in base contact with a demolition charge and is not engaged in combat may automatically disable it. So just like a siege engine, really.
Oh, that's good then. At least as long as you can somehow isolate it.
Mm-hmm. Right, what we're moving on to. Sieges.
Yeah, defender equipment, I suppose, then. Actually, start on the page before, actually. Like, it talks about, they've added in gates and doors and that, haven't they?
Yep.
So, added, different levels. So, you've got your fortress gates, you've got your dwarven doors, heavy armoured doors, heavy doors, external domestic doors, and internal domestic doors. So, nice little what's got, scale as you, break further and further inside, and you start breaking down doors of houses and that. Defenders equipment, I think this is exactly what we've needed for sieges and that, because in the past you've had all these little bits and pieces, and it just becomes it makes it very difficult to make any siege different from any other. It tends to be throw up your ladders, you go up and you end up fighting against a hero, trying to break your way in, trying to get that little choke point here.
Mm-hmm.
At least now they've got some things they can do so that they can desert the walls if it starts going against them, and try to pull back further in, start defending barricades and rally points. And they've also got things like rocks and boiling oil, so they've got other things they can do. And you don't have to overload your entire army with bows. The spike barricades sounds horrific though. It's got they basically have, to roll dice and they have a 1 in 6 chance to get away without no chance in their life on it. Strength 3 hit on most things is going to wound on a 5 or a 6, isn't it?
So, yeah, you got barricades. Okay, I can see that. I was just thinking, how does this work in terms of a castle? You just put the barricades up against the edge of the wall and just you got to get on a ladder, you got to win the fight, and then you got to survive jumping over the spike barricade.
Well, it's got one way you can do this is you can make choke points in that. It doesn't specify it's got to be any models to climb over, so you do need to leave your own little escape route to get past. But then you can put like a nice big defensive hero in there, can't you, to like plug up the gap and then just defend the barrier.
The rallying point's quite a nice little one, because for the sacrifice, like a banner's normally 25 points, but this also has the courage bonus. I guess that's just to make up for the fact that you can't move it.
Yeah, I'm just going to give it something back. It's basically like your lot. If you put that, I suppose, behind like a spike barricade, then you've got a nice defensive position, and you maybe put some like boiling oil rocks or something beside it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a nice little thing, couldn't it?
So I'm now reading rocks and boiling oil.
Essentially, rocks are basically just like it's a light object, so you can move it. Sorry. Oh, well, it's got to be on walls, so you can't use it behind the barricade. Never mind, ignore that. It's a pretty nice little like throwing weapon, just to like use and like start stoning people who are trying to get up ladders in it. Could be a nice little way of putting some wounds on heroes early on, couldn't it?
Strength 6 on a 4+ is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it's only like two strength down from like a troll, really, isn't it? And it's better shoot value.
Yeah, some nasty crossbows going on there, and you can ignore the shoot value, ignore the shoot limits for that as well. You can just say, right, for the cost of 5 points, everybody in my army that's up against the wall has now got a strength 6 crossbow, which is pretty horrific for 5 points. Yeah.
On top of that, you can knock them off the ladder if you don't kill them.
Yep.
And then they'll have falling damage on top of that, so you probably kill them anyway. And the boiling oil is even worse. It's heavy object, but like, I mean, yeah, it's got like you pour it on them, and like you could potentially knock everyone on it down the ladder.
Sorry, I got that wrong. I got it entirely wrong. So you've got a pile of rocks as a light object. Everyone that's touching the rocks can throw them. The immediate problem I see with that is that basically you would only be able to have 2 models that were touching the rocks and the edge of the wall.
I suppose also you're leaving a base gap in between each, so that reduces your amounts of like defenders, doesn't it? If you try to position them just right, so they're going between ladders and that, so that you've got people who wouldn't be fighting anyway, then you've got like. But then I suppose it's only an inch away from the wall, so yeah, 8 inches away from the model dropping it, and an inch away from the wall. So you've got to be fairly close to ladders, I suppose. But then if you get a nice, good hero like Aragorn or someone holding the ladder, chances they're not going to lose many fights and not going to get killed, so they won't be able to get in anyway. The boiling oil one's basically like, it's almost the equivalent of like a siege weapon, isn't it? A good high strength hit and then splash damage on everyone else around it.
Any model within 1 inch of the walls. So it says is a target, so you only do it on 1 enemy per turn.
You do need to use 2 guys as well to tip it as well.
Oh yeah, any model hit by it takes strength 8, and then any model within 2 takes strength 4. So yeah, that is nasty. Yeah, that's a minor siege weapon, obviously with no knockdown or anything.
Well, you do knock them off a ladder on a 3+. It's even better.
Yeah, potentially.
Could end up not knocking people flying.
But then on a roll of a 1, your boiling oil, every time you use it on a 1, then you've run out of oil. I mean, for 30 points, that's quite a risky investment, to be honest.
It's a gamble. It could be absolutely devastating. It could miss and do nothing for the entire game.
Yeah, or it just never goes out, and you do untold amounts of damage.
I say, it could be absolutely devastating. But bear in mind as well, if you knock someone off a ladder, everyone else below them, I think, has to roll the same dice roll on a 4+. They also lose their footing. They go down as well.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't just clearing out an entire ladder if you get some rocks on someone.
Yeah.
Target the person below the person who's in combat at the top, and you could see that clearing the entire lot.
And we have attacker equipment, which has no space in between the 2 words.
What?
The title attacker equipment has no space in between the 2 words.
Oh, I think you've got a misprint there. Mine's fine.
All right, okay. It's on the ebook.
It's got siege ladders, just bread and butter into it, just try and scale walls. Problem is, as I say, you tend to come up against like a good hero, just basically just pushes you back every single turn. Or a shielding hero just keeps pushing you back, maybe chance of falling off. Your battering ram, obviously, you want to get through the gates as soon as possible because that's the weak point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But your siege tower, I think that's worth like the cost of 8 ladders, because like, as I say, the problem with like a siege ladder, is you're going 1-on-1 with a hero constantly, turn after turn after turn, until eventually you either kill them or you're just broken or whatever. But siege tower, you just get a good big wallop of troops coming all at once and punch a good hole in it, and there's no way of plugging it up besides just trying to form a shield wall on your own wall. So I'd go for the siege tower myself, and then like throwing a few ladders as well, just try like distract the guys on the edges.
Yeah, you could make a concentrated attack on one area of the wall with that.
Yeah, and then if you've got siege engines on top of that, maybe take some shots at the people who are on the edges. Or you could be really risky and shoot at the wall and just hope you don't roll the one on scatter.
So you got infantry models or monsters that push it. So I'm quite taken with the idea of having 6 Krebine of Dunland pushing the siege tower.
Flat, 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 flat. Suddenly it's on the walls.
And then they get there and they're just like, guys, why didn't we just fly onto the walls? Yeah. So that's...
What we have to do is, like gentlemen, we're going to walk up the tower 4 inches at a time.
I mean, that is it in terms of attacking equipment. But, you know, fair enough, because you get...
Siege engines cover the rest of it, really.
Siege engines and demolition charges, you know, they're specific to the legions they come with.
I'd be tempted to, like, get a demolition charge in the gate first and just try to blow the gate open, then just use the battering ram to just knock off its hinges, like, at the end, if need be.
No, I put the demo charge on the siege tower. You bring that on, it's like, yeah, I'm going to make a hole in your defense right now. Boom.
And that was the last thing Aragorn expected.
Yep. Krebine flying the bomb onto the wall and then blowing it up. That was the last thing they expected.
So, like, Grand Siege looks like your typical, like, wall attack. This is what I think we've been needing for a long time for sieges. We've had the old rules, but it's just been a bit outdated and not caught up with what we've got, and it's all a bit vague, isn't it? The thing that strikes me is, like, I think the objective should be a bit more flexible rather than just saying 12 or more, full stop, which got like getting into the courtyard. It doesn't count for like the points level, does it?
No, so basically you couldn't run the Fellowship or the White Council as an invading force, because you just wouldn't be able to meet that objective.
Trust me, Elrond said this is a good idea. If you did, let's say, a 500 points defending force, or attacking force, sorry, you're going to have roughly 30, 40 troops. 12 is quite a lot to get inside the fortress and an attack.
Mm. So, tournament points value, it specifically says that you want it in a ratio of 4 to 5 in terms of points.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, because way back when,
it
used to be 3 to 1.
Oh, right. It used to be a lot more than.
Yeah, it used to be like 500 points defenders could deal with 1,500 points of attackers, and then
I thought it was like 1.5 defenders, but okay. Maybe
yeah, it kept. They've shrunk it as all the new stuff comes out one after another. I mean, the old Helm's Deep scenario had 1,500 points each, but 500 of that was the relief force. So.
Yeah, they were like at that ratio until the very end, where like you're supposed to good wins it out anyway.
Yeah, and I mean in that scenario, the Uruks are regenerating, so what the actual points wind up being is sort of up for debate. But I don't know. You could potentially look at introducing sieges as part of a match play tournament, but you would probably need to have something in place where you provided siege equipment, you provided the siege terrain, and then you'd have to negotiate the weird bit of having one side be 25% larger than the other. So
Defend the Village could work as like a tournament thing, but until like it's been played a bit and you know whether it's balanced between attacker and defender, it's a bit hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah, so Defend the Village is the second scenario here, which does not involve a wall, but does involve basically trying to set the village on fire, which is what we've been talking about with Dunland already, which also has the same rules for putting buildings on fire, which is great because it means I can just lift those for my tournament. So the objective for this one is you get 2 points for every house that's on fire. Defender gets 2 points for every one that's not. There is 1 VP for doing wounds on the enemy leader, and there is 1 VP for broken. And I think I will definitely be giving this a go whenever I can find somebody to play it against, because it sounds like a very interesting game to play. So there seems to be 5 houses. Yep.
Yeah, 5 it recommends.
But yeah, so that one could potentially be used as a match play scenario.
Could use this at your events, like as long as Jack's happy with it, give it a whirl.
Yeah, I think I could swap that in instead of the scenario that I was going to use, because then this is just sort of much simpler.
You also know that this has been play tested, so you'd hope it's nice and balanced.
So after that, we move on to a nice section of Rohan villages, which basically teach you how to assemble and build and paint the terrain that's come out.
And trust us, it's all very lovely. And there's a nice big picture of lots of beautiful Dunlandings and Isengard killing Rohan because they deserve it. Kieran. I'm not too proud to take a side swipe.
And then we get to the appendix, which is 4 scenarios with a legendary legion. And most interestingly, the introduction of Helm Hammerhand.
If I remember rightly, my prediction is he's basically going to be like Dwalin on a horse, and it's almost like that, isn't it?
Not too far wrong, no. Although 3 wounds here instead of 2.
A little bit less fate and like a little bit less fight value, basically. Like he's more or less perfectly identical. He's got a 2-handed weapon. He's got his burly. He's got his horse, as you'd expect, and he's also very fighty. So yeah, taller Dwalin.
So all friendly Rohan warriors get +1 to their fight value within 6, and he may fight with his fists instead of his sword, in which case he can use bash. Also, he is never unarmed, so you can't just shatter him with a Gundabad shaman, which is quite nice and thematic. Comes from when the Dunlandings were besieging Helm's Deep, which is named after him. And he used to sneak out at night and kill the Dunlanding chieftains in their beds or strangle them. So it's all to do with power of his bare hands. He has a war horn, which is nice, reflect the horn of Helm Hammerhand. And he's also got a quite interesting array of heroic actions.
He's also terror as well.
He has terror on the turn he charges. Is that right? Yep.
Yep, sorry, misread that, yep.
So he's got Resolve, Strike, Strength, Defense, and Challenge. He's a hero of legend. So not many things you can challenge, but the stuff he does challenge is probably going to die.
He's also the same cost as Bolg, basically.
Yeah, and that's more justified once you put him into the legendary legion that he is part of. He has the Expert Rider and Horse Lord, but he only has 1 fate point, and the horse is not armoured, nor is it 12-inch like Aeol the Young's. So basically, I think the problem with that is that he's going to be very vulnerable to getting his horse shot out, or hurled off, or black darted, or sorceress blasted. He is kind of just a big beat stick on a horse. He's sort of a light version of Elendil.
As Tom put it yesterday, which were like he's basically brilliant at smaller points levels where you're not so likely to come across the big scary stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Bolg for good, except that Bolg is just better.
5'7".
Yeah, higher fight, and he gets all the special rules when he starts killing stuff.
He's also a little bit less brave.
Yeah, very slightly. Now, it has a little bit at the end which says that Helm is in the Rohan army list, but you may not include any other named heroes, and if you include Helm, then your alliance with everything else becomes red. So basically you might as well take him in his legendary legion or not at all. And the reason the wording is significant is because there are a lot of hero combinations where it says, for example, with Aragorn and Boromir from the Minas Tirith lists, where it says that if you have them in the same list, they lose their army bonus and they're red with everything else. And that's fine by and large, because they might still affect each other. So basically you lose the army bonus, but otherwise you're fine. So that's the price.
Two very killy heroes with very big might stacks.
So before this, I read this, I was thinking you could do like a best hits of Rohan list where you've got Helm and you've got Earl and you've got Theoden and you've got Gambling with the Banner. Like Helm with regenerating might would be absolutely horrendous, but we get that covered in his Legendary Legion anyway. But this specifically says you may not include any other named heroes from the Rohan list with Helm. So it's not even a caveat of you lose the bonus and then you're red with everything. It's no him and nothing else. And I have a suspicion that that might be what they errata a lot of those rules to be. Because as it stands, I can still do Boromir with LSR, and I can still do Earl with Theoden and Gamling and whatever. I just lose the +1 strength on the charge, which is still potentially fine. But I mean, with Gondor, you just basically lose the courage bonus, and if you're spamming Fountain Court Guard, then who cares?
Fountain Court Guard along with Aragorn. Aragorn, I think, has a 12-inch standfast anyway, doesn't he? And he's probably not going to die till the very late stages most of the time.
Mm-hmm. And then you get Boromir with his 6-inch banner of magic and wonder. So the first scenario in this appendix is the Field of Celebrant. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tolkien C's are usually hard C's.
I'm sure James will let you know.
Yep. So this one is about Eorl the Young.
I think it's basically the battle that basically caused Rohan to become independent. Mm-hmm. If I'm sure I'll be corrected, but like Eorl basically came to the aid of the steward of Gondor, and as thanks for like this battle, he basically gave him the lands of Rohan, and which got like that basically formed the whole kingdom.
So the participant to get Eorl the Young, you get a king of men on horse, which it says in brackets is to represent Cirion. I'm taking it this is not the same Cirion.
Different Cirion, yeah.
That came out with Shadow in the East all those years ago then. You get the Riders of Rohan, you get some Warriors of Minas Tirith, you get some Knights of Minas Tirith, and they're up against a Carnish King on chariot, Carnish Chieftain on chariot, loads of chariots, loads of horsemen, loads of Khand on foot. And you've got a fast-flowing river in the middle, and Eorl comes on to save the Minas Tirith people on the 4th turn. So basically, you want to wipe each other out down to, or good side wants to kill 75%. Evil player basically just wants to kill Cirion.
Out of spite.
Quite a nice scenario. And then the next one is Assault on Edoras. So another version of that. So the one we covered previously was from the Third Age, where everybody's at Helm's Deep, but they've left Elfhelm to guard Edoras. Whereas this one is
no named heroes. I think it's
nope.
When the Dunlandings, I believe, took over Edoras, whilst Helm Hammerhand was elsewhere, I think, and basically he started his war. He never, I think, won. This is entirely based off what I remember reading yesterday, so I'm probably a little bit hazy on it.
Fair enough. So basically, the evil people want to capture the Golden Hall of Meduseld. So once I've built one, we can do that. And the Dunlanding people basically get all of their special rules from their Legendary Legion. Then you got the Birth of Helm's Deep as a different scenario, which has got Helm. This is basically, as we were discussing, where Helm's defending Helm's Deep from Dunlandings. You got Helm on his horse, you got Captains of Rohan, you got Royal Guard, and against them are just vanilla Dunlandings, no named heroes. They get their Legendary Legion rules again. Helm gets his free heroic combat a turn, which is also from his Legendary Legion, which we'll finish up with in a second. The objectives are to basically good must reduce them to 25, and evil wins if Helm is slain. So quite similar to the previous scenario.
It has a very similar feel to like the sally forth from Helm's Deep when the Uruk-hai invaded, and it's in the picture anyway. Like Helm and the other and his Royal Guard are all charging out and ploughing to the like Dunlandings.
The layout is basically it's the courtyard outside of Helm's Deep. And finally, we will end with Helm's Legendary Legion. So Helm and Captain of Rohan and King's Huntsman are your available heroes. Warriors, Riders, Royal Guard, and Outriders are your options. Helm must always be included. Helm is the army leader. Helm is hero of legend.
surprisingly.
Fine. So Rohan infantry get their spear rule. There is no 33% bow limit for riders included here, so you have to take warriors on foot to counteract or guard. Yep. But this rule, Helm Hammerhand is the king of Rohan, and he gains the Mighty Hero special rule, which is most commonly known as Aragorn's rule, with a 3 point of might every turn. And additionally, he may declare a free heroic combat every turn without spending might. Oh dear.
Some people were saying yesterday, if you're using heroic combat, you're not taking advantage of the Mighty Hero or vice versa. I can't remember which way they said. But if you're calling the heroic combat, then you've still got that 3 point of might that you can then fall back on if you get the 5 to get the 6 anyway. So it's not like lost, really.
I mean, you're effectively strength 7 with two-handed burly on strength 5, so you're killing virtually everything on a 4 or a 3. But yeah, maybe you've fluffed one and you got a 2, and you need to might it up, and then suddenly Helm is free to go and terrorize other areas of the board. As I said, the main problem is, magic. There's no Fortify Spirit on Helm. There is no protection available from the list. It has no allies to sort it out. So this list relies pretty heavily on the destructive power of Helm Hammerhand, and he is a bit too easy to neutralize. So this is this is more of a fluffy list with a fun hero to use. Potentially, as Tom points out, more difficult to deal with at lower points value. Probably will not see it in meta tournaments. And that is the end of the book. So,
yeah, I'm just looking forward to using Dunland. I'm going to be using a lot of them in the new year, I think. I've just got to start painting him. Made a start on Gorolf this morning, so I'm hoping I can get him done either today or tomorrow, and we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm. You got any final reflections on this book?
It's good. Is that informative?
I mean, we've talked for quite a while, and we've covered pretty extensively the book from cover to cover without doing a hugely in-depth look at all of the scenarios. And as we do the campaign in our East Anglia community, potentially we will do battle reports on those, and people can enjoy those as a separate thing.
I've still got quite a few I've got to write out for the Fall of Gondor, the Gondor at War one. I've got our big 3v3 one to write up at some point. I'm going to try and do that over the next few weeks, I think, along with the others I've fallen behind.
We've explored what we liked, what we wished might have been included. But overall, it's a very nice book to read. There's lots of very good additions, which I like, and the scenario play, the scenario writing, very strong again.
I think this one's going to be a lot easier to get players for, because in the Gondor War one, it's quite difficult to find fiefdoms players, for example, and there's a lot of different fiefdoms warriors you need to get for it. This one is essentially Dunlandings, Rohan, Elves, and Isengard.
There was only one scenario from Gondor at War that I really didn't like, which was the Faramir's Charge, because it was basically written to be unwinnable. I thought, why would you waste? I don't know. You can recreate the thematic moment, but I'd have just preferred scenarios to be balanced and able to be won by. I get the idea that maybe you do a scenario or two where it's you put the difficulty on easy for one and hard for the other, is for when you've got players of different experience levels. You're introducing somebody to the game maybe, but that one was 12 trackers, 36 orcs, Gothmog against Faramir and 12 knights, and the trackers could volley. The chances of you actually reaching the opposition with...
saying that, I did play against my mate in that, and he managed to not only charge me, he managed to bring down Gothmog, and I think it was only lucky. Towards the end I managed to get rid of the last of them. But Jay Clare did say to me and James, we were playing the Oscillus scenario at Warhammer Worlds, which got by the way, when you get to that scenario, if evil wins, let me know. Oh, sorry, if good wins, let me know.
Wins, yeah. Because I think he said to you that nobody he knows has managed to win it as good yet.
Probably not without cheating, no.
So, I mean, we haven't played the ones in Rohan at War yet, so it's impossible to know if there's if there's one similar, but from a cursory reading, it doesn't appear that way.
Well, I don't think there's no like suicide charges in this one, is there?
No.
So I'm sure like a lot more of it balanced. It's only a matter of waiting and seeing, isn't it? First scenario is going to be Bernie the Westfold. I don't think that one's going to be too difficult to do. I've just got to paint up some wildmen. I'm going to be doing that for an event Sean's doing in February anyway. So hopefully I can get on with that fairly soon.
Adio, thank you very much for listening to East Anglia podcast covers Rohan at War, a shiny new book. We're very excited to get to the table and try out the new profiles and the new scenarios. This will probably be the last one before Christmas, so have a great holiday, everybody. League opens in January with Jason Mountain's event. Was it January the 20th?
It's the 17th, 18th, 18th, 19th. It's one of those three.
Which is an interesting format where you get a team of 3 and you've got to play against 8 other teams of 3. There's quite a nice little format where you can't have duplicate heroes and you've got to come up with some basically different and interesting lists, and it's quite a low points value, so you get the interesting matchups that come with that. So we hope you've enjoyed listening to our first year doing a podcast. Wish we'd been able to come up with content a bit more regularly, but for one reason or another, the editor, me, has been a bit hamstrung in the last 3-4 months, but we're hoping to resume perhaps not weekly content next year, but certainly more regular. So thank you to all of our listeners and our nearly 100 subscribers for tuning in, and we will see you in 2020, a whole new decade. Goodbye.